Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem, la la la, ya da 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 da. Baruch Hashem. Blessed is the name. Thank you, God, for everything you do for us all the time. How are you, my holy sisters and brothers? That was Zusha and Pumbedisa featuring Matt Dubb. An unlikely combination producing an amazing sound. How are you? Let's light up the darkness. Who is with us as we get it going? Let me just stop that. On a Sunday night, Rosh Chodesh. It's still Rosh Chodesh. We set the clocks ahead. So last night we were in the same day as we are in today. It's less than 24 hours later. So we wish each other a good Chodesh in Yiddish or a Chodesh Tov in Hebrew, a good month. Particularly this month, this is the Hebrew month of Nisan, the month that includes Passover, all of the amazing energy of Passover and all the holiday that's included in this month is embedded in the first day of the month, the Rosh, the head of the month. This day contains unlimited possibility for freedom, for miracles, for breaking free of the habits and behaviors and situations which enslave us, which constrain us. This is the month that we can break free. Right now, we want to be identifying what it is we want to break free from. That's our Pharaoh. Come Passover, we ask Hashem for help, and we ask for Hashem for help to be freed from the pharaohs that that enslave us. And if we ask, and then as we read the Passover Haggadah, it becomes so personal, so important. It's not a story that took place how many years ago? 3,333 years ago. It's amazing. We are going to be celebrating the 3,333rd Seder this Passover. And this is the anniversary, the 3,333rd anniversary of the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people. This shall be for you the first of the month, the first of months. The first day of Nisan, incredible energy in this day that we are living right now. And so a great time to say, Chodesh Tov, a good month. Who is with us as we get it going on the 1st of Nisan? Paula in Chicago, Yehudit in South Carolina, Renee in Indy. Paula is here with emojis on. Stephen in New Hampshire, James in Indianapolis, Harold in Oregon, John in Memphis, Irma in the house, Nancy in North Carolina, Wakas Kurishi says, good bro, welcome to you. Lucy in Minnesota, Renee says, Baruch Hashem. Sharon, shalom, and happy 70th birthday to me from Lebanon, New Jersey. Sharon, we're going to dedicate tonight's learning to you. I know that you are somebody who loves to share blessings with everyone around you and everyone in the world. It's your birthday. I know you're sending blessings to us and to our whole community, our whole learning community. And so we want to, augment your blessings by dedicating tonight's learning to you. Yom Huledet Sameach, a very happy birthday to you, Sharon. And particularly such an important birthday, number 70. Beautiful, beautiful. And as I always say to people who turn a birthday with a 0 on the end, 70 might be really scary this year. But next year, when you turn 71, you'll realize you're in your very, very early 70s. Let's see. Jane says, Baruch Hashem from Kansas City, Missouri. Joe in Fresno. Gwen in Southwest. Emma is Michigan, right? Orna in L.A., Irma says, happy birthday to you. Stephen also. Gwen says, Erev Tov. Alan tagging his buddy, Darian. Dane in Alabama. Orna says, shalom. Wakas likes what's going on. Sharon says, my husband got me an AT hoodie and mug for my birthday, bringing me to 1 t-shirt, 2 long sleeve shirts, 1 hoodie, and a mug. That's a super fan. We do have great merch in the AT store, shop.accidentaltalmudist.org. You can see how much our birthday lady loves her AT merch. Steve says, Shavua Tov. Nina's wishing you a happy birthday as well. John loves a month of breaking free. That's cool. Emmett in Iowa. Jethro says shalom. Leanne says chow on. I'm not sure what that means. Miriam in Hayden. Azrael in Washington. Iris in Buffalo. Oh man, I can't get to the bottom. Debbie in Tom's River. Paul tagging friend Angel. Andrea in Florida. Diane in San Diego. Renee wishing happy birthday. Joseph in Massachusetts. Amy in Oakland. Randy in Florida. Pauline in Arkansas. Not my birthday. Sharon's birthday. Marcia in Eugene, Oregon. Paulina saying happy birthday. Nicholas in Portland. Heather says hi. Welcome, everybody. Over there on the YouTube side. Lynn in North Texas. Marjorie in Georgia. Gigi in British Columbia. Okay. Believe it or not, with today's daf, Kuf Yud Gimel, page 113 of Tractate Pesachim, the fourth volume of the Talmud, the laws of Passover. With today's daf, page 113, we finally complete our discussion of the first Mishna here in chapter 10, the last chapter of our tractate. It ends on page 121, so we've only got about eight pages to go, or 9 including tonight's page. Tomorrow we'll finally get into this discussion of the second Mishnah here in chapter 10. But this final page, discussing, sort of going off in various directions on this first Mishnah, it was a lot of it was about the 4 cups of wine. Is there a problem drinking an even number of cups, which the sages in Babylonia thought could open you up to become vulnerable to attack by evil forces? Led to a lot of discussion of what are evil forces and how do we, sort of protect ourselves from them. Kind of proverbs, folk wisdom is a lot of what we've been learning here. And here on this last page, it's almost going to be like, sometimes you might think, if you haven't studied Talmud before and you've heard there's a lot of wisdom in the Talmud, you might think it almost reads like the book of Proverbs, right? With just pithy little sayings conveying, the wisdom of the ages that we would be smart to take a look at and see how it applies to our own lives. Of course, as we've seen, the Talmud does so many things. It goes into very deep, complex, nuanced legal analysis, helps us to understand situations where we might come to transgress, detailed understanding of the law and measurements, how to bring sacrifices, which sacrifices, what happens if you didn't bring it, etc. But today's page does read like a little bit like the book of Proverbs, with a bunch of beautiful, pithy, wise sayings. There's so many of them in this page that what I'm going to do is not read all of them. We're going to do most of them, but I'm going to skip around a little so that we can let them land, right? And I mean, I tend to talk fast, so I'm going to make an effort to slow down when we get a real sharp piece of wisdom and let it land. Let's listen to it and think about it for a moment before we move on. All right, let's do this. Pardon me. Okay, so we're right at the top of page 113 on the A side here in Tractate Pesachim. And Rav said to Rav Asi, "Do not live in a city where horses do not neigh and dogs do not bark, as these animals provide security and protection." Right? So the idea is if you hear dogs in the city, you know that people, have guard dogs around, and thieves are going to think that's not such a good city to go in and steal things from. And horses neighing, the thieves will think, it's going to be hard to make a getaway from this town. They have horses. They could chase me if they realize what I've done. And do not live in a city where the mayor is a doctor. And the reasoning given here is the same reason why you don't want to live in a city where the mayor is a Torah scholar. You want the mayor busy with the business of the city, governing the city, not studying Torah nor tending to his patients. You want somebody full-time focused on the matters of the city if he's going to be the mayor. And do not marry 2 women, as they are likely to join forces against you. And if you do marry 2, marry a 3rd as well. If 2 of your wives plot against you, the 3rd will inform you of their plans. Obviously, this doesn't apply much anymore. We don't have multiple spouses. However, not a bad piece of advice when you think about getting into a partnership. Partnership should be probably you and a partner. You and two partners, you could end up being the minority in a problem where they're ganging up on you. So if you're going to be part of a three-way partnership, maybe better to have a four-way partnership where you're confident that at least one of those partners will side with you. God forbid you end up in a problem. Rav said to Rav Kahana, it is better for one to turn over a carcass than to turn over his word, i.e. to break his promise. What does it mean to turn over a carcass? Could mean, like get involved in a real horror show moment. It's like awful and gross. Nobody wants to involve themselves with a carcass, but it's but better do that than be somebody known for breaking their word. Some alternative interpretations of that little piece of wisdom here in the notes. According to some commentaries, the expression turn over his word refers to a chatterer. Not so much somebody who breaks his word as just somebody who talks too much. Why? Because somebody who talks too much is likely to end up breaking his word because, they give their word. They talk too much. It's enough said. And as someone who talks too much will eventually speak inappropriately, even if they don't break their word. Others explain that whereas turning over a carcass will render one tameh, ritually impure, foul speech will defile one's soul, right? So the idea we've seen so often that if you touch a corpse or the carcass of a creeping thing as defined by the Torah, so you'll acquire tuma, ritual impurity, you'll have to go through a purification process. But at least you can purify your body. When you break your word and earn a reputation as somebody whose word is not his bond or her bond, right? You can't purify your way out of that. It'll take forever to try to resuscitate your reputation if you come to be known that way. So rather than turn over his word. So Rav saying to Rav Kahana. And so for more advice from Rav that he shared with Rav Kahana. Skin a carcass in the market and take payment, but do not say, oh, I am a priest or I am a great man and this matter disgusts me. Right? Better to be self-sufficient even in one of those professions that was kind of looked down upon. Much better to do that than to be dependent on others to fulfill your needs. Taking charity from the community, borrowing, begging, always being involved with trying to raise money from others, by asking for handouts. Not a good way to be. Much better to have an honest profession, even if it's not a profession that is widely respected. It is preferable, we just said that. Rav also said to Rav Kahana, if you ascend to the roof, carry your food with you, meaning one should always carry his sustenance with him, even if he goes only on a short trip. Be sure that you've provided for yourself and your family in whatever situation you're going to find yourself in. Think it through, right, before you leave, especially if you're going camping. If 100 pumpkins in the city cost a zuz, meaning pumpkins are very cheap, still place them carefully under the corners of your clothes. In other words, treat food respectfully, even if it isn't expensive. You're signaling to heaven that you appreciate your blessings and you're not going to take things for granted just because they're cheap. Rav said to Hiya, his son, do not get into the habit of drinking medications, lest you develop an addiction. There it is from our sages 2,000 years ago. Don't get into the habit of medicating away your troubles, lest you become addicted. Sometimes you need medicine, but try to avoid it as a habit. And do not leap over a ditch, as you might hurt yourself in the process. And do not pull out a tooth, but try to heal it if possible. And do not provoke a snake in your house to kill it or chase it away. And do not provoke a Gentile, meaning a non-Jew, as this too is dangerous. right? So that's especially for Jews who are always in the exile, in the diaspora, always a minority community surrounded by some other population. Be careful in provoking the majority among whom you live. That's going to be good advice for anybody living in any community. Don't provoke the majority of the people around you. Similarly, the sages taught there are three beings one should not provoke: a small non-Jew, a small snake, and a small Torah scholar. What is the reason? Because their authority stands behind their ears, meaning they will eventually grow up, assume power, each in his own way, and avenge those who have harassed them. Right? So you might think that somebody who, in their fully formed version are going to have power over you, but now they're just a young kid and they, this is your chance to lord it over them before they grow up and lord it over you. Very foolish pattern of behavior. Be mindful. Respect everybody, but especially be mindful of people who maybe are young now, maybe out of power now, but may well rise into a powerful position in the future, and they'll remember that you treated them disrespectfully. Rav said to Ivu, his son, "I struggled to teach you halacha, the laws, my son, but my efforts did not succeed as you did not become a great scholar. Come, and I will teach you about mundane matters." Right? So a little bit of a negative introduction. He wished that he raised a son who was a Torah scholar. He didn't. However, as a sage, he's come upon many matters that are going to be extremely useful to his son that he loves, even outside the study hall where Torah is studied, right? So even in non-Torah matters, the following wisdom will be of great value. And since most of us are not Torah scholars like the sages, these are going to be some precepts of great value. Here we go. Okay. Number one, sell your merchandise while the dust of the road is still on your feet. Meaning, as soon as you return from your travels, as a traveling, person who does import-export, right? He travels, buys things, comes back, and brings them to sell locally. Sell your merchandise as soon as you get back, because the prices may fall in the meantime while you're waiting for the prices to go up. Instead, the prices go down. Now you came back, you have a lot of merchandise. The price is, enough for you to make a profit. Sell it. Seize the moment. Don't try to outsmart the market and end up outsmarting you. Furthermore, it is possible that anything you sell might later cause you to regret the sale. Right? So kind of the opposite advice. But just know that anything you sell, later you might regret it, except wine. Wine, you can sell at any time without regret. Because even if the price goes up later and you sold now, you never know if that wine was going to go bad. And at least when you sold it, it was good and you could get your price, or at least the current price. Rav further advised his son, open your purse to accept payment and only then open your sack to deliver the goods to ensure you will receive payment for your merchandise, right? Make sure that if you have a cash buyer, they've got the cash ready on hand. Make them show it to you. Ideally, you get the cash, then you hand over the goods. It is better to earn a kav from the ground than a kor from the roof. Now, a kor is 180 times larger than a kav. This proverb means that it is preferable to earn a small amount from a local, safe transaction than to attempt to earn more through a distant, risky venture. Rav continued, if there are dates in your storeroom, run to the brewery to sell them. If you wait, there is a good chance the dates will go bad. And the Gemara asks, and how many dates should one keep for himself? Rava said, up to 3 sa, a certain measurement. And Rav Papa said, if I were not a beer manufacturer, I would not have become wealthy. Some say that it was Rav Chisda who said, if I were not a beer manufacturer, I would not have become wealthy. And the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the word sudana, the Aramaic term for a beer brewer? And Rav Chisda said, a pleasant secret, sod naeh, and acts of loving kindness, as brewing is a good way to make money and also enables one to perform good deeds. Why is brewing a good way to make money? Because people like beer. You know there's going to be a market for your product. Not only that, it makes people happy. It's a fine, upstanding, respectable profession. And because you're making money, you're going to be able to use that money to perform good deeds. As I always advise you, if at all possible, it's always possible, whatever your income is, set aside 10% in a separate account. So as soon as income comes in, put 10% of it in a separate second bank account. That's your charity account. You know that all the money in that charity account is going to go to charities that you care about. Now that you've got a steady flow, anything comes in, 10% you know is going to go out. So now God is your business partner. The wealthier you are, the more these charities and good causes and the needy and the poor are going to benefit from any wealth that comes your way. It's a guaranteed flow through you to those righteous causes. Then you can really feel great about being prosperous, and you'll be helped. You'll be helped from heaven in your prosperity because you know that you and God are partners, and a defined amount is always going to righteous causes. And right here he says, brewing is a good way to make money because it also enables you to perform good deeds, as the note says here. The Gemara continues to offer advice about non-religious matters. Rav Papa said, anything you acquire with a document by means of which ownership is transferred, i.e. a bill of acquisition or a bill of obligation, still requires collection. Never, even though you're the legal owner, now that you have the legal ownership, you still better go out there and make sure that they know that you're the owner. If you have to collect rent, that the rent is coming in. Just the fact that paper changed hands doesn't mean that, now you don't have to deal with the thing that you own. Be involved in your investments. Be involved in whatever you own to make sure that whatever is due to you is actually going to come. Don't take your sources of income for granted. Any sale on credit is uncertain, whether or not it will come to fruition. Right? If you extend credit to people, know that you may not receive what you want to receive. And even if it does come to fruition, the money is bad. These funds are difficult to collect, and they are generally not paid on time. Better to deal with cash buyers. Rabbi Yochanan said 3 matters, citing the people of Jerusalem. When you go to war, do not go out first. Better to go out last. The reason is so that if your side is defeated and you need to flee for your life, you will enter the city of refuge first. Right? You don't have to be the hero in the front lines unless that's your job. If you have a choice, better to be in the rear so that you're at the front of the retreat, as it were. And Rabbi Yochanan also said, citing the people of Jerusalem, that it is better to make your Shabbat like an ordinary weekday. Do not be beholden to other people for your sustenance, and exert yourself to join together with one upon whom the hour smiles. We heard both of those points before from Rabbi Akiva. Now Rabbi Yochanan is bringing down Rabbi Akiva's wisdom, but sort of showing how it is in action with the people of Jerusalem, that they were enacting Akiva's wisdom. Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said 3 matters, citing the people of Jerusalem also. Number 1, do not indulge in a shameful act in public because of the incident that occurred involving David and Bathsheba. Right? So the incident that occurred between David and Bathsheba is he was King David, and from the, he was living in the palace, which was the tallest structure, and he was able to look down on the neighboring rooftops. And what did he see? The beautiful woman Bathsheba bathing on her rooftop, right? So she was, showing herself on the roof, caught the king's eye, and that led to a terrible sequence of events. I mean, on the one hand, you could say eventually that meant that she married David and mothered Solomon. Right? So that's what came from that union. So something good did come from it. And that's why our sages will look to find ways, to say that there was an underlying through line that was good for David. But certainly the surface and simple and clear and truthful meaning of this story, as it's told in the second book of Samuel, chapters 11 and 12, is that David looked on her, wanted her, found out that she was married and that her husband was a soldier, and then David arranged for her husband to be in the front lines, to be sent on a dangerous mission, and his name was Uriah the Hittite. And once he was put in the front lines on a dangerous mission, he instructed his general to back up the army, leaving Uriah up there exposed. And not surprisingly, he was killed. And then David married Bathsheba. And God didn't like it and sent Nathan the prophet to chastise King David. And he told that story of the, what do you call it? The parable of a rich man who has lots of sheep, and guests come and he wants to make a feast for his guests, and rather than get one of his many sheep to feed the people at the feast, he takes one of the sheep from his poor neighbor who really can't spare that sheep. That sheep was so dear to him. And when David heard that parable, he said, "Oh, that's terrible. Whoever would do that, that man should die." And Nathan the prophet said, "That man is you. Who could have had any woman in the kingdom to be your queen, any single woman. You set your eyes on the wife of one of your soldiers, had him killed, and then took her." God has told me to tell you. God told Nathan the prophet to tell King David, "You will be punished for this." Right? And so David suffered many calamities in his own home. His son Absalom comes to mind, as well as Adonijah. I mean, he had lots of trouble with his other sons, and in fact lost a son. The first baby that he had with Bathsheba died, and all this was, a punishment, and a public punishment for what he sought to do in a hidden way. So, from all of the events of that story were kicked off because Bathsheba was bathing, in the nude on her roof where she could be seen publicly. So don't do that. Okay, let's move on. Where am I? So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi is citing these three matters in the name of the people of Jerusalem. The first one is don't do shameful things like being naked in public. If your daughter has grown up, it is better to free your Canaanite slave and give him to her than to leave her to find a husband on her own. Okay? Young people don't make the best choices in their marriage partners. And be careful with your wife with regard to her first son-in-law, as she is especially fond of him. And what is the reason for this warning? Rav Chisda said, due to the possibility of licentiousness. Rav Kahana said, no. It's due to the fact that she might give him all your money and leave you impoverished because, she wants her daughter and this nice guy that she finds so charming to have everything they need. And you're just going to empty your bank account to support the young ones, as it were. And the Gemara comments, since either of these could happen, it is best to be prudent. Rabbi Yochanan said, 3 people are among those who inherit the world to come, meaning they've lived a righteous life, and when they get into the next life, they're going to have a beautiful place in the world to come. As we've discussed many times, the Jewish understanding of where we go after we die, when we return to the world of souls, also when we reach the Messianic age and we're resurrected and brought back, both of these can be referred to the world to come. But in this context, we're talking about returning to the world of souls. But as we've said, when we go there, it's not a binary destination, heaven or hell, good or bad. There's an infinite number of layers. And so according to the life that you've led, with all its pluses and minuses, all the good and all the evil that you've done, it's all going to get balanced out, reward and punishment, etc., and set you in a certain level among all those many, many levels. So what you want is not just to have a place in the world to come, but to have a good place in the world to come. So, so Rabbi Yochanan said 3 people are among those who inherit the world to come, right? So you get that sense of a good place. One who lives in Eretz Yisrael, one who raises, meaning in the land of Israel, a Jew who lives in the land of Israel, one who raises his sons to engage in Torah study, and one who recites Havdalah, the blessing marking the demarcation between the end of Shabbos and the beginning of the week, one who recites Havdalah over wine at the conclusion of Shabbos. And the Gemara asks, what is the special importance of that mitzvah to recite Havdalah over wine? And the Gemara answers, this is referring to an individual who has only a small amount of wine and who nevertheless leaves some of his Kiddush wine for Havdalah. Somebody who thinks ahead, he has very limited resources, but he wants to do the best that he can to fulfill the obligation of reciting the Havdalah blessing in a beautiful way. Rabbi Yochanan further said, the Holy One, blessed be He, proclaims about the goodness of three kinds of people every day as exceptional and noteworthy individuals. Who are these individuals who are exceptional and noteworthy and attract the sort of loving approval of the Holy One? Who are these three people? A bachelor who lives in a city and does not sin with the women, right? A single man who might succumb to temptation, but he keeps himself on the righteous path. A poor person who returns a lost object to its owners despite his poverty. And a wealthy person who tithes his produce in private without publicizing his behavior. Somebody who gives a lot of money to charity and keeps it anonymous. It's not that he's doing it in order to be known as the big philanthropist, but he just wants to do the good that is possible. And the Gemara reports Rav Safra was a bachelor living in a city. When the Tana taught this Baraisa before Rava and Rav Safra, Rav Safra's face lit up with joy as he was listed among those praised by God. And Rava said to him, this does not refer to someone like the master. Rather, the statement applies to people like Rav Chanina and Rav Oshaya, who were cobblers in Eretz Yisrael, and they would sit in the marketplace of prostitutes and fashion shoes for prostitutes. And the prostitutes would enter their shops and look at these men who were sages, but earning their living by making shoes. However, due to their piety, these sages did not raise their eyes to look up at these scantily clad prostitutes. And those prostitutes were so impressed by their modest and righteous behavior that when they swore, they would say as follows. By the lives of the holy sages of Eretz Yisrael, it is this type of bachelor who is praised by heaven. Right? So, meaning, okay, you're a single guy, but if you kind of live in a way where you never encounter, this kind of temptation, it's good. You should do that. You really should do that, right? If you've arranged your life that way, heaven is going to appreciate that. But it's even more noteworthy people who, whose jobs bring them constantly into contact with that kind of temptation, and they make sure they put a system in place, as it were. In this case, shielding their eyes on a regular basis to prevent themselves from going off the path, as it were. The Gemara cites a similar statement. The Holy One, blessed be He, loves three people: one who does not get angry, one who does not get drunk, and one who is forgiving. That's one of those sayings you can take to the bank. So let's repeat it. The Holy One, blessed be He, loves three people: one who does not get angry, one who does not get drunk, and one who is forgiving. Right? Ideally, we don't get angry. Not everybody can be that way. But if we are, but at least whoever it is that is angering us, if we can train ourselves to be one who is forgiving, we can get into this group, right? One who does not get drunk doesn't mean one who does not partake in wine, doesn't mean one who, partakes in wine and uses that kind of, a little bit of a differentiated condition, like when you get a buzz from wine, but for you, it's a way to open up the insight, right? And to have, ideas of a holy nature that you wouldn't have otherwise. That's fine, right? And so we have that saying, when wine comes in, secrets come out. It's both a positive and a negative saying. When wine comes in, secrets come out if you use that kind of intoxicant properly, so that beautiful ideas come that wouldn't have otherwise. Or if you use too much of it and then you have loose lips and say things you shouldn't say, obviously that's highly negative. But one last time, the Holy One, blessed be he, loves three people: one who does not get angry, one who does not get drunk, and one who is forgiving. The Holy One, blessed be he, hates three people: one who says one statement with his mouth and means another with his heart. Inauthentic, false, fake, phony people who lie and mislead. Not only do we dislike such a person, the Holy One just hates such a person. Who else? In short, a hypocrite. The second person whom the Holy One hates: one who knows testimony about another person and does not testify on his behalf. Right? Somebody is being attacked in a lawsuit. You have evidence that will, free this person or free him from this attack, and you keep your mouth shut because you're afraid to draw attention for yourself. It's like causing suffering. The Holy One does not like that. If you know information that should come out in a court of law, you're obligated to testify. And one who observes a licentious matter performed by another person and testifies against him alone. His testimony is meaningless because in a Jewish court of law, a Beis Din, you need two witnesses to establish any kind of a matter. So if there's only one witness who's going to come and say this person behaved in a really sinful, wicked way, but there's only the one witness, so you haven't proven, in terms of testimony in a court of law, you haven't proven that this person behaved that way. There was no second witness. But you have damaged his reputation, right? So if you're the only one who knows this thing, that's problematic. What you maybe should do is see if you can find, if the person truly is wicked and evil and is behaving this way in some kind of pattern of behavior, there must be someone else who is a witness to that kind of behavior as well. Go find that person so that two of you can corroborate each other. And the Gemara comments, this is like that incident where two of you sinned with immorality, and Zigud came alone to testify about him before Rav Papa. And Rav Papa instructed that Zigud be lashed. And Zigud said to him, two of you sinned, and Zigud is to be lashed? An objection that actually became a popular saying. Two of you sinned, and Zigud is lashed? What? And he said to him, yes, as it is written, one witness shall not rise up against a man, and you testified against him alone. You have merely given him a bad reputation without actually proving that he's a sinner. Rabbi Shmuel, I'm over here, skipping forward a little bit. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said, not only is this permitted, hold on a second. So then there's a question of, is it permitted to hate someone in your heart? Is it permitted? And so Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak brings down the line, Proverbs 8:13, the fear of God is to hate evil. And Rav Acha, the son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, what is the halacha with regard to whether one who saw someone sin may tell his teacher so that he too will hate him? And Rav Ashi said to him, if the student knows that he is trusted by the teacher as two witnesses, and therefore his statement will be accepted, he should tell him. And if he is not trusted by his teacher as two witnesses, he should not tell him. So we have a teaching here that it is permitted, a mitzvah, to hate him. If one sees another person about to violate a prohibition, and you warn him, and nevertheless he disregards the warning and transgresses, it is a mitzvah to hate this person until he repents. So it's not to develop an animosity toward that individual, like, I hate him, right? But you can hate somebody's behavior and keep hating it until they change, repent, and move on from that kind of sinful behavior. The sages taught there are three types of people whose lives are not lives due to their constant suffering: the compassionate, the hot-tempered, and the delicate, right? So this is one of those cases where they're exaggerating a little bit to make the point, right? So a compassionate person, of course we want to be compassionate, but know that it's not easy to be compassionate, right? Somebody who's truly compassionate, He's going to have to pay for their compassion over and over again because people take advantage of them and because they feel the pain of others. It's difficult to be compassionate. It's difficult to be compassionate, and that just makes the effort to be compassionate that much more heroic. Likewise, it's difficult to be hot-tempered. You might as well get rid of that because now you're not benefiting anybody by being hot-tempered. And lastly, the delicate. Right? If you try to not be so delicate, some people just are delicate. They can't help it, but it makes life tougher for them. And Rav Yosef said, all of these attributes are found in me. He was compassionate and hot-tempered and delicate. Furthermore, the sages taught members of 3 groups hate other members of the same group: dogs, roosters, and Persian priests. Persian priests of the religion that was being practiced 2,000 years ago. And some say also prostitutes. And some say also Torah scholars in Babylonia. Right? So they're saying shocking things to make you think. Like Torah scholars should be so far above dogs, roosters, prostitutes. But if those groups are characterized by having, strife within the group and hating each other, are we going to come to realize that we are behaving the same way, meaning the Torah scholars in Babylonia? I mean, the sages were saying, obviously you should not behave that way. We have to find ways to remove strife from within the groups that we should feel safe within. The places where we go for refuge can't then become a source of strife in themselves. Likewise, the sages taught members of 3 groups love one another: converts, slaves, and ravens. Converts, slaves, and ravens. And what does it say about ravens? Ravens are social birds that are always found in groups, even when they are not nesting, brooding, or migrating. And for this reason, they are compared to sociable people. Likewise, converts and slaves, right, who maybe don't enjoy, obviously not slaves. Converts should be an exact equal footing with people, who were born Jewish, but maybe they feel a little bit insecure because they're sort of new to the community. Nevertheless, they turn out to be, very sociable slaves too, at least among themselves. They love one another. They enjoy each other's company. They share being in that less privileged position. And we can see that they become more social within the group. 4 types of people cannot be endured by anyone: an arrogant pauper, a wealthy person who denies monetary claims against him, a lecherous old man, and a leader who lords it over the community for no cause. An oppressive leader and a licentious a lecherous old man. God forbid we should find those 2 qualities in the same person. Also, one who divorces his wife once and twice and takes her back a 3rd time. He should decide definitively whether or not he wants to be married with her. And of course, that was in the days when the man decided whether they would be divorced or not. Today, that's a mutual decision. But people who break up and come back together, make up your mind. Make up your mind. And I'm almost done. Just 2 little more ideas, and then we'll get to the comments and questions. Rabbah bar Chana said that Rabbi Shmuel bar Marta said, that Rav said, citing Rabbi Yosei of Chutzal, from where is it derived that one may not consult astrologers? In this case, astrologers who predict the future for you. Why should we not do that? As it is stated, Deuteronomy 18:13, you shall be wholehearted with the Lord your God. Meaning, the Torah demands absolute faith in God and acceptance of his justice without attempting to predict the future. Right? So we don't have some kind of blanket prohibition against, reading the horoscope, right? There is a sense of Jewish astrology, and actually the Jewish months coincide with the astrological signs. But What you don't want to do is get involved in these readings to predict the future. If that kind of stuff helps you understand yourself and inspires you to live a more righteous, upstanding life, and you become less angry, if your problem is you're too passive, you become less passive by understanding yourself, that's a different matter. But what we don't like is, trying to look into the future, right? God knows the future. And that's why, whenever we talk about, I will do that, or this will happen, we always add, God willing, or I don't want to tell God his business, because, the future belongs to God. We just try to do the best we can in the present. And from where is it derived concerning one who knows about another that he is greater than him, even in just one matter, that he must treat him with respect, as it is stated, Daniel 6:4, because a surpassing spirit was in him, the king thought to set him over the whole realm. So just as the king set Daniel up as a person of great importance because of something that he had seen in him, similar to the way that Pharaoh set up Joseph over the whole realm because he saw wisdom and a connection with God in him. Likewise, when, it's so easy to despise people, just pick one negative quality about them and then, just have contempt for them. We should do the exact opposite. What we should be doing is finding at least one good quality in everyone that we meet or everyone that we know, and then respect them for that one good quality, because surely everybody has at least one good quality, and that's how we can start to open that eye and that ability to see everyone around us as our brothers and sisters, fellow children of the Creator, and we'll come to treat everyone with greater respect. And who is honored? One who honors others, as we learn in Pirkei Avos. And finally, Rabba bar Chana said that Rabbi Yochanan said, citing Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rabbi Eli, eat an onion and sit in the shade, i.e., eat inexpensive food while sitting in a comfortable place, but do not eat expensive geese and chickens, as your heart will pursue you. In other words, you will develop a taste for luxuries, and then you'll always feel like you don't have enough money, and you'll be tense, and you'll lose sleep, right? Live more frugally, and you'll have a much more righteous and enjoyable life. And devote less to your food and your drink, and spend more on your house, as one's house is a better investment than food. Obviously, eat enough food so you're not hungry, but in terms of eating luxuries, better to invest that money in your house, which is an investment. It's still there, unlike the stuff that you eat up and it's gone. Okay, that's what I've got for us this evening. Let me check comments and questions. Okay, Heather, how come they don't allow multiple wives anymore? If that's part of a religion, it should be okay to have multiple partners. It's not hurting anybody. Just wondering. And I guess Steve offered an answer. Technically, it is still allowed, but you need the approval of 100 rabbis from 3 different countries. Can't remember if it's a total aggregate or 100 from each country. I'm not familiar with that particular exception, but it was 1,000 years ago, almost exactly 1,000 years ago. What was his name? I think Rabbi, I want to say Gershon. But sort of the great rabbi of the generation where he was teaching just decreed, and the decree was accepted universally, no more multiple wives. Obviously, it's all in the Bible. Abraham, had Sarah, and then Sarah gave him Hagar. Isaac just had the one wife. Isaac just had Rivka. But Jacob had both Rachel and Leah and their concubines who gave him children, and so they were considered sort of at the level of a wife. And we have lots of biblical figures do that, but there's a lot of things that we don't do anymore. We don't have the temple, and we don't bring sacrifices, and nor do we have multiple spouses. And thank God, life is complicated enough. Elvis, question: if you are the only one to witness an unethical act, but you find someone else who observed that same act by the same person on a different occasion, does that qualify as having two witnesses needed to make a formal accusation, or must the two witnesses be testifying regarding only one incident? Well, that is a fantastic question. So first of all, we have to distinguish situations, right? So if you're going to bring somebody before a Beis Din, first of all, you're bringing him for damages because he harmed you, right? That's different than committing a sin, which seems to be implied here. So like, why would you bring someone, why would you report them like they're engaging in sinful behavior, but you're not a victim of it? What if there is no victim? What if that person is just committing a sin that's between him and God? That really seems like, okay, that's not something that we need to get involved in being a talebearer, right? But when we talk about there's a victim and people are being hurt by this behavior, now it's a different set of rules, right? Because especially to protect someone from capital crimes, if somebody's a sexual abuser, a rapist, a child molester, things like that, and there's a danger that that person is going to harm another person, then you need to step forward, like run, do not walk. But when we're just trying to establish a pattern, it's just going to be situation dependent, right? And also we're going to have to recognize that there's going to be different laws in a Beis Din, right, where Torah law is being applied, and the law of the land, right? So in the United States, the U.S. common law and the laws of the states and the laws of the nation are different than Torah laws, but it is a Torah obligation to obey the law of the land, so long as it doesn't conflict with Torah law. So, if these are the kinds of things that you need to bring to the attention of the police authority, then of course you need to do that. But it's a good question in terms of, witnesses of separate events, but it's the same kind of event. Do they somehow combine? I don't want to answer that because I'm not sure. We are going to come across that situation with God's help during our journey through the Talmud. And here Nina's telling me that Pedro is giving us the ruling who it was. It was Rabbi Gershom of Mainz in the year 1000 who decreed against having multiple spouses, a man having multiple wives. All right, my friends, that's what I've got and thank you, Pedro. And that's what I've got this evening. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, Monday, the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, where we're finally going to get into our discussion of Mishna number 2 here in chapter 10, the last chapter of Tractate Pesachim. Have a great night.